This is my first opening traps video. I don't usually do these because I discourage people from playing the opening just for the traps, especially beginners and intermediate players, because this long term is really bad once you get into higher level chess. You play against better opponents and these traps just don't work. They leave you in bad positions, and that is a recipe for failure. So today I'm making this opening traps video for you to beware of the traps in the Danish Gambit, so you not only know them but you learn them and don't let yourself get fooled by these dumb traps. For context, this is the Danish Gambit. White plays e4, black plays e5, and now white plays d4. E takes d. This can be the center game if queen takes, but here the Danish Gambit, the determining move of the Danish Gambit is c3. And c3, white offers a second pawn. Now you can take this pawn and still be fine. It's a fine pawn to take, though this is not what I'm going to recommend to play against the Danish. Though let's look at some of the lines if d takes c3. Now, white usually plays bishop c4 here, offering a third pawn on b2. And I don't really recommend you take this because there's a lot of traps involving bishop takes back here and these two bishops forming an incredible alliance against our king. And so just beware of taking 3 times these pawns back to back to back and giving white such good compensation for these pawns. Let's look at some traps. If you try to defend this pawn here by not taking on b2 and playing this inaccurate bishop b4, already there can be a trap right around the corner for the white pieces. Look, bishop b4 is not very good if you're trying to defend your pawn. On knight takes, that would be the idea, you're pinning this knight. But white can just take with this pawn and directly attack your bishop, gaining some tempo on your bishop to force it to move immediately because it is defended. And here, if the bishop goes just to an okay looking square on e7, it's already winning for the white pieces. And I'm gonna flip the board on these tactics because it does get a little nightmarish if you're looking at it from the black pieces perspective. So here it's white to play and win. Pause the video to solve. Simply queen d5 threatening checkmate on f7 is already winning for the white pieces. And here there's not many ways to defend. You can go with knight h6 defending f7, but here we have remove the defender with bishop takes h6, and here you're again threatening checkmate on f7. If you take my bishop, I have checkmate. And a different way to defend here is like d6, giving f7 but giving room for your king. And here white is just enjoying life. Queen f5 check, king e8, we go back, we can just play around with this and really just check here, and we can even take and then take on g7 if we want. And this leaves us with a really good game, and the king is on c6. So that is trap number 1, do not play bishop b4. Now we're going to look at some traps for white if we accept this gambit fully with c takes b2, bishop takes b2. And now be careful to not develop bishop e7 because you just give a pawn on g7. So already there, don't do that. Here, there's another type of scenario in which white can have a very winning position very quickly. Let's say you want to develop with tempo bishop b4 check. The white pieces will defend with knight c3, although king f1 is also playable. And here you want to attack this pawn given the pin on this knight with knight f6. Okay, so the white pieces will develop as well, knight e2, planning to castle next move. And so here already it's not good to take this pawn because white would have simply bishop takes f7 check, king takes, and then queen d5 check, a nice little fork here. Okay, the king would move, but this is really bad since you not only gain the knight, you're forcing bishop back to e7 or queen here. If the king moves, you're just winning a second piece with queen takes b4 here. So the black pieces would be forced to be passive here, and the king is in the center, cannot castle anymore. But that's not only it. White can play this bluff a little longer and play castles here. And what they're doing is you're now reinvigorating the threat on this e4 knight by taking away this pin with the king on e1. And so now this knight is attacked, knight takes c3, knight takes c3, and if black plays just this little blunder, it's not that much, right? Just bishop takes c3, then you have bishop takes c3 attacking g7. And here it is completely losing for black to defend this g7 pawn with castles. It's a complete blunder here. And here it's mate for the white pieces. You can pause the video to solve if you want. It's crazy. It's really crazy. It's queen g4. Queen g4 threatens checkmate, seeming pretty dull, right? It's like just like a little threat here, but it's completely over. If black defends with queen f6, well then you can just take the queen and this pawn is pinned, and you can threaten checkmate. This is actually a checkmate forced in 5 moves. g6, queen h4 threatening to go to h6 and then mate. h5 only defends, queen g5 to threaten to go to h6 and g7, king h7, and now bishop d3. Threatening to take this and mate on h8. You can't do anything. Either you get out of the pin with king g8, so now we can't take any more, but then we would have queen h6 with mate coming in. And if you play anything else, it's just mate in 2, queen takes, king back, and checkmate on h8. The other defense, which seems better, is g6, but here it's completely over after queen d4. Sadly, this pawn pinned on f7 is the determining factor of this being winning for the white pieces. You cannot defend against queen g7 or queen h8 checkmate threats. And here the only move is like queen f6 to block, and then queen takes f6. And this is complete GG's, checkmate next move. So be careful here. Don't take this extra pawn and be greedy. Instead, with the black pieces, you should opt for castles. And don't be scared of e5 attacking your knight. Here you have knight g5 attacking this pawn. And if there's queen d4 looking like your knight is trapped, you can play this nice little knight c6. Oh no, my knight. Queen takes g4, and now you have a discovered attack with d5 attacking this queen and this bishop, making it good for a trade. And let me tell you, trades are very good in the Danish Gambit because you're already up 2 pawns. And so giving this pawn here does not make you sad at all, because you have actually knight takes e5 attacking this queen. And now queen can't take the bishop because of knight d3, and you have a beautiful royal fork. Again, I do not recommend you play this. Instead of bishop b4 check, there's also the inaccuracy d6, which is not very good because it prevents your bishop from going out and developing, and you're so far behind in development as the black pieces, because these bishops are out, that you're doing a non-developmental move on your turn is really not good. But this is another trap that can happen, so beware. After knight f3 here, development move, planning to castle. A very nice and intriguing and enticing move is bishop g4 here, pinning the knight to the queen. But this already falls to bishop takes f7 for the white pieces, sacrificing the bishop. And here you cannot take, well you can, but it's pretty losing. If you take back this bishop with king takes f7, there's knight e5 and not knight g5, because here queen takes and you're defending the bishop. So knight e5 is crazy. You cannot take this knight because of queen takes d8 and your queen is done. And so this is a discovered check on this bishop, and you're going to win back the piece as the white pieces. So okay, king e8. Now the king can already not castle anymore, and then knight takes g4. Very bad. Don't make it worse. It's very hard to develop your pieces here, I know. Bishop e7 falls to bishop takes. Believe it or not, the best move is knight d7. But please, don't play knight f6 thinking this knight is developed enough, because it falls to knight takes f6, g takes f6, and queen h5 check. And God forbid you play king e7 thinking your king is safe. Bishop takes f6. Another brilliant move, sacrificing the bishop. And here, if king takes, queen h4 check, wins the queen on d8. And if you go to d7, well, this is also just terrible. Queen f5 check. If king e7, bishop takes f6, winning the queen with a skewer, so king c6, and now knight c3, threatening checkmate. There's not many ways to defend checkmate here. If you go b6, I have queen d5 check, forcing the king back, and now we win the rook on a8. Another way to play this as the black pieces, this is one of my favorite ways to play this, is to give back material immediately, which is a good and sound way of thinking in terms of gambits. You give back material for time, for tempo, to develop your pieces and balance that game out. d5 is played here. Giving back a pawn, bishop takes d5, and now knight f6 to attack this bishop. This is fine already. If bishop takes f7, you shouldn't be scared of this because king takes f7. And if queen takes d8, oh no, my queen, you have bishop b4 check, which is a really nice trick. And here, okay, you're attacking this queen, discovered attack on this king. And if queen d2, you just have bishop takes, knight takes. And here the material is, it's completely equal, which is somewhat crazy. And I actually prefer the black pieces here because we develop and attack on tempo on e4, forcing something like f3. White can play also knight c3 here, which is fine. And here, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, and this knight looks really nice. Be careful. Here it's still fine for the black pieces if you go like knight d7 and bishop e7. But if you're impatient and you play c6, beware, this is a complete blunder. It allows the fantastic move, knight f6 check, a brilliant move. And here you really don't want to go king e7 because of bishop a3. And here it forces your king to detach away from this queen and give this queen for practically free. So you're going to want to take this knight, not with the queen because it allows bishop takes. And here there's the excellent follow-up tactic, queen takes d8 check, forcing the king to take, and now bishop takes f6. And this forks the king and the rook, and after bishop e7, bishop takes h8. And here the white pieces are up the exchange, a rook for a dark squared bishop. So instead you want to play knight d7, knight f3, and now kick the knight so there's no knight f6 because it's defended properly. The knight will go back, and here you have bishop e7, good development, and you're going to castle. Here it's fine for the black pieces. Finally, there's a way that you should play against the Danish Gambit, and I'm going to show it to you now. E takes d4, c3, and here instead of being greedy and accepting this sacrifice on c3, you play d5 immediately. And d5 immediately assaults the center and forces white to react. E takes d5, queen takes d5, this is completely normal, and here white will regain the pawn with equality. Though, this is an isolated pawn which is considered weak in chess. So white continues on here with a weakness. And here it's imperative for you to attack this weakness with knight c6, knight f3, and then bishop g4 to attack and pressure the defender of this pawn. Now beware, there's another final trap here for the white pieces. And that is bishop e2, a very calm move, but really be careful here. Because it's very, very likely that you think you're going to win a pawn here on d4 with bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, removing the defender of d4, and then queen takes d4. And I got this from an Eric Rosen video, so if you want to see that video, I'll leave it in the description for you. So after queen takes d4, there's bishop takes c6, removing the defender of this queen, and after this is check, after you take back this bishop, white gains this free queen. Ow. Instead here, you just want to play bishop b4 check, knight c3. Do not play this tactic once again and take on d4. Instead here, you'll take once. White will be very excited to take back, and then take here. But then you go queen c4, preventing white from castling. And this is a very cool idea, is that here you have not fallen into the trap, but you're also preventing white from doing some very needed castling abilities. And say, okay, if bishop takes c6, you have b takes c6, and you have ideas to castle long or just to play knight e7 and castle short. It's completely fine here. If queen e2 check, trying to trade queens, it's forced. Queen takes and then king takes. King takes is forced because this knight is pinned. The knight cannot take. King takes, and then you have a really fine endgame with king d7, knight f6, rook e1 check, and overall this endgame is pretty equal. I hope you enjoyed this video, and beware of the traps in the Danish Gambit.